Jai Baba. Welcome to the 2022 annual general meeting of the Meher Archive Collective, the MAC. I'm Chris Barker, and I'll be your host today. In this meeting, we will present an overview of MAC activities during the past year. We're going to be focusing on building renovations and on precious Baba items that have already been donated to the MAC. We'll also be discussing where MAC is headed in the future, and we'll have a special keynote presentation from one of our main scholars and researchers, Dr. Ward Parks. Here's some information about our Zoom format today. At the end of the presentation, there'll be an option to go to breakout rooms on different topics where more of your questions can be answered. And if you have questions during the meeting, you can write them in the chat section. During this meeting, you're going to hear from various board members of the MAC and from other members of our team, the MAC team. I'd like to introduce the board members now. So first, Scott Tower, our board chair and president. Evie Lindeman, vice president. Hugh Huntington, our secretary. Also, Ann Barker, Ron Cantor, and Laurent Weisberger.
Jai Baba.
I'd also like to introduce the following MAC staff members. John Justo, who is a consultant to the MAC board. Claire Barrett, MAC's archive manager. And Heather Masendario, MAC's administrative coordinator. And Jana Weed, one of our volunteers, communications lead person. So having introduced the board members, I'd like to ask Hugh to formally call this meeting to order. So Hugh, can you make us official?
Yes, this 2022 annual general meeting of the Meher Archive Collective is now called to order.
Thank you, Hugh. We're going to talk about the agenda. If we can have the agenda slide up. Different people are going to talk about aspects of the MAC operation, about the mission, about archiving, the library, a building update, strategic vision, and then we will have Ward Parks give a keynote address. And then there will be other information there. You see it on the agenda. And finally, down at the bottom of the list, we have breakout rooms, and the breakout rooms are going to have different topics. You'll see those topics later on. And if you'd like to find out more about things, you can go to one of those breakout rooms. Well, let's get started with the presentation. And first up will be Evie Lindeman, MAC's vice president, and she's going to share MAC's mission statement. So Evie, please take it away.
Thank you, Chris. So MAC's mission is to collect, preserve, and share Meher Baba's divine legacy of materials, artifacts, and words with integrity, love, and transparency for the benefit of humanity. Mission basically has to do with why we exist, what the depth of our intent is. Our mission statement contains 3 verbs: to collect, preserve, and share. And these imply action, but to share what? Things related to Baba. And how? With love, integrity, and transparency. Several days ago, I found an old letter from Baba's secretary, Adi Kairani, that he wrote in 1977. The title was Circular Regarding Treasures of Beloved Meher Baba. This was an era when nearly all the Mandali were alive and had this shared concern. And I'd like to read a few lines to you today. Dear brothers and sisters in Baba, over the years, beloved Baba has personally given away many items associated with his beautiful form, such as his sadras, sandals, and strands of his precious hair. The highest consideration should be given to the well-being and safety of Baba's treasures at all times. A critical period in the preservation and well-being of the treasures is the time when Baba lovers possessing the treasures pass away. Now is the time when arrangements for the transfer of the treasures to a responsible party, Baba lover, organization, or center must be done. Arrangements must be made prior to the death of the Baba lover, because if they are not made, the treasures could fall into the hands of relatives who are totally ignorant of the true value of these treasures. All of the Mandali were concerned about this 45 years ago, and this is a matter that is very deep in my own heart, and one of the reasons I joined the board. And here we are today, continuing to have this conversation. It is up to us now, both individually and collectively, as a shared mission to preserve and share these treasures, not only for now, but far into the future, generations hence, when we are no longer here. Wherever you decide to leave your treasures, MAC can offer you information about how to make sure you leave them in safe hands. We can do this together. We can all make a difference. Please join us in this effort, and thank you.
Thank you, Evie. Next, we'll have Mac's archive manager, who's going to talk about the archives. And this is Claire Barrett, and she brings to our MAC board her professional experience and her academic training in archiving. So we're very fortunate to have her. So Claire, take it away.
Well, hi, friends. As Chris said, I'm Claire Barrett, the archives manager for Meher Archive Collective. I joined MAC in June of this year, and every day since has been the most exciting adventure I've ever had. As the archives manager, I have the incredible privilege of assisting donors in the process of donating treasures to the archive, as well as ensuring all items in our collection are well taken care of. Today, I'd like to talk about some recent additions to our collection, and I'll also show some examples of the work we do with items once they have been graciously placed in our care by our wonderful donors. The first new item is this gorgeous green teapot you can see on your screen now. This beauty was donated by Anne Giles, and Anne was gifted this teapot back in 1981 by Phyllis Frederick after Anne spent a month assisting Phyllis with her personal archive. I love this teapot. These beautiful items are also newcomers to our collection. And on the left of your screen, you will see the custom-made lint remover and hairbrush, which belonged to Princess Norina Machiavelli. And on the lint remover, you can see the Machiavelli family crest, which is just such a fun detail. And on the right, you can see Kitty Davies' custom-made shoes that she got from her podiatrist, Dr. Payne, which, if you ask me, is an absolutely terrible name for a doctor. We are so grateful to have these personal items from Kitty and Norina because they highlight a really critical part of what the archive wants to do, which is provide future scholars and spiritual seekers a chance to connect with the past. Preserving items like these that show the Mandali's humanity allows everyone that comes to the archive a chance to bridge the gap of time and learn from everyone who came before them. And that, my friends, is the real archival magic. MAC also welcomed into their collection this lovely flag, which flew on the Meher Retreat Tower in Upper Meherazad. This flag was donated to us by a wonderful Hetty Johnson, who received it from Gabe Mednick in the early 90s, and thanks for Hetty sending him guitar strings, which he couldn't find while staying at Meherazad. We absolutely love when donors can tell us stories about their treasures. It absolutely brings them to life. Now, in addition to Hetty's story of how the flag came into her possession, we also have these beautiful photographs taken by our very own Chris Barker in 2012 and 2019 at the Meher Retreats. Seeing treasures like the flag in their original context is so important to being able to fully appreciate and understand their meanings. And just like all the stories that our donors can tell us, context like these photographs is something I absolutely love to add to our collection. Now, Obviously, collecting all these beautiful treasures is a very high priority for MAC. But once the items come to us, our priority becomes cleaning, repairing, and storing everything in high-grade archival conditions. On the screen, you're going to see a lovely Elaine Cox, a volunteer who works as MAC's specialist and conservator, in the middle of her recent cleaning of the beautiful flag. And her conservation efforts are what gives all of these treasures the best shot at longevity, because we want everything to be around for as long as possible. So in addition to collecting and preserving treasures, MAC also wants to make sure that everything within our collection is fully accessible for both on and off-site researchers and spiritual seekers. Transcribing the many letters and documents within our collection, such as the one you see on your screen, which is part of the Fred and Ella Winterfeld collection, makes these papers word searchable in our catalog, as well as makes them easier to read for anyone who might struggle with the original handwriting. Accessibility is something that is very near and dear to my heart as an archivist, and I'm so excited to be part of this. I hope to bring some volunteers in the future. If you've been keeping up with our Instagram, you might have already seen that. Laurent's going to talk a little bit more about volunteers later on, but I want to bring that up to kind of spark everyone's interest in volunteering, because there are so many fun projects and we're just getting started. As you can see, the archive is a busy, busy place, but I'm always available by email if you have any questions about storing your Baba treasures at home, preparing them for donation, or just general questions about the archive department. You can email me at claire.barrett@mayorarchive.org. And thank you so much for your time. This is my first annual meeting since I joined, and I am so happy to meet everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. If you have, if audience members have further questions for Claire, they can also attend the breakout meeting where Claire will be answering more questions about archiving, or any questions you have about archiving. Okay, next up is Heather Masandaro, who's going to talk about some of the recent items that have been donated to the MAC. Heather?
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today, and I'm so grateful to be part of MAC. Many of you may have known Jack Small, who was Adi K. Arani's right-hand man, and who helped many pilgrims in his time working in India for the Avatar Meher Baba Trust. Well, then you know Jack was also very enthusiastic about Baba's treasures. It must have rubbed off on me, as Jack was my godfather and father-in-law, and now with MAC, I'm finding my own enthusiasm in the work of collecting, archiving, and sharing Baba's treasures. So while visiting the Trust archives in 2019, I saw these words on the wall about the importance to the future of even a scrap of Baba's Sadra. These words made a deep and lasting impression on me. I could not help thinking of the fragments of the cross that entire cathedrals would be built for. And later, I thought of these words again when inventorying one of Theus Malmberg's promised gifts to MAC. The object in these photos exemplifies Baba's words to Mera precisely. Theus told me when he was given this treasure, he was a resident and working for the trust in India. He asked Mani one day at Meherazad for something of Baba's, and Mani teased him, but she did go into her office and came back with this heart-shaped box. And inside the box is a locket, and inside the locket is a scrap of Sadra, of Baba's Sadra. So next slide. So during my initial year at MAC, it became very clear just how important and priceless storytelling is. And the stories fill out and they breathe into life the significance of the material items. This necklace is something very precious, and especially so when paired with the story. When Baba was in Myrtle Beach in 1956, he asked Elizabeth to take off the necklace, and then he touched and he handled every single little bead. When giving back the necklace to Elizabeth, he conveyed that she should keep it and to remember him by it when he would not be with her physically. And next. This is Baba's Baba button. Meher Baba actually wore this button for at least a couple of years, according to Gulu, Kekobad Dastur's daughter. While wearing it, it was concealed, and Baba would lift up his shirt to show this pin to people. Baba later put the pin on Kekobad's shirt, and Kekobad wore it until he died. Theus was very friendly with Gulu and Jalu in Upper Meherazad, and Gulu gave this precious button to Theus. She said, "I have a treasure for you, but you cannot say anything because it will be snapped up by others." Next slide, please. The next item was recently given to Mac by Jack Mormon. This letter was one of a group of papers that remained on Meherazad Hill from the 1940s in Mansari's care until Mansari gave it to Jack in 1975. Jack showed Mani this letter and asked her if Baba signed through the carbon or signed each sheet of paper individually, because at the time, these circulars would be typed 6 or 7 sheets at a time, most likely by Ferrum Working Boxwala. In answer to Jack, Mani raised her index finger and proclaimed that Baba signed each sheet of paper for authority. Next slide. Mac was given Muhammad the Must's Kafni by Philip Krager this year. Heidi McGovern Dahl had given the Kafni to Philip, and Muhammad had given Heidi the Kafni in 1989, prompted by Erico after a colorful and humorous incident of Muhammad's spontaneous roaring of laughter at the sight of his caretakers, Heidi being one of them. Next slide, please. This year, Mac received some Baba treasures from Dorothy Cassidy when she passed. From this collection, Mac has Baba's bathwater. Chris Barker took this photo of Dorothy. Chris also told us that when Dorothy arrived in Mandali Hall in Meherazad for the first time, Erich stood up to greet her in honor of the difficulty in her life, and the women Mandali were particularly loving towards her. Next slide, please. This year, Roger Stevens gave us a large collection of paintings and photos. Here are some of the many photos of the Mandali that Roger took in the 1970s, and now he's given to Mac. Many of these photos come with delightful stories. The image of Mansari commemorates the day that Roger's parents surprised him by showing up in Meherazad on Christmas Eve. The full story is absolutely charming. Next. Mac has a regular program on babazoom.net. It's called In Touch with Mac, Cherishing Baba's Legacy. So please join us live for these events or watch them on YouTube afterwards. So far, we've had 4 events. And if you want to see them on YouTube, you can get up to speed with what's happening in the archive, the building, board members, activities, volunteers, fundraising, and staff. Next slide. Next, Baba Zoom, or rather Meher Baba Family now, which is the website, will be on December 10th at 11 a.m. and will feature the Shaw Family Collection. It's one of Mac's most incredible collections, and the Ken Kaufman Collection. We hope to see you there, but if you miss it, again, it's on YouTube. So thanks, everyone, and Jai Baba.
Thank you, Heather. It's really wonderful to hear all those stories, to see those precious items and to hear the stories behind them. Next, I'd like to introduce a good friend of mine, Ann Barker, who will tell us something about the library and her vision for this important part of the project. Ann has a master's degree in library science and retired as director of a library.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. I just want to tell you about the Meher New Life Library, which is part of the Meher Archive Collective. It was started by Winnie Barrett and later cared for by Debbie Blackman. And here are a few samples of the fascinating items in the collection. In the new building, the Meher New Life Library will circulate books and other materials to the Western North Carolina Baba community. Others will be welcome to visit the library and see the collection. The volunteer staff will be happy to assist you in your searches as far as possible. Rather ambitiously, the library is being designed as a resource for spiritual seekers and scholars to explore and to research the broad spectrum of materials that have been created to elucidate the divine life, the messages, and the impact of Avatar Meher Baba. Our aim is to gather information that will be meaningful to researchers far into the future. Most of the books that are donated will go to the library and be placed in categories for circulation, reference, and rare print and audiovisual materials. When there are enough copies of a certain edition of a book or title, the extra copies are set aside to be sold in a future bookstore or online to people searching for out-of-print books, periodicals, and CDs. Thank you so much for your donations of materials and also for your donations of financial aid for our work. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Ann. Next, I'd like to introduce Hugh Huntington, connected with the renovations, overseeing the renovations at the MAC building since its inception, is MAC secretary, and he coordinates all the construction activities. So could you give us information about the renovations, Hugh?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for joining us. For those of you who have not seen this wonderful building, this is the old Red Oak School, soon to be the Meher Archive Collective Office. We began this process 4 years ago. Demolition was the first process. We took 16 of these cans out of here, full of all kind of trash. This is the roof being finished over the classroom section of the building. Had to completely rebuild it, so it's a brand new roof. And here we have volunteers that were so helpful in helping us get this building ready to be brought back up to a proper standard. Now, this is the kind of condition we found this building in. This is one of the stairwells as we found it. And here we have the stairwell close to being finished. This is Connor, Peter Nordine, of course, in the middle, and Jamie Zimmerman. Notice the sheetrock going up, the foam insulation above, as we have tried to emphasize making this building not only fireproof, but very ecologically sound. Here's the stairwell as it's finished, new plaster and new windows. Here's Jeannie. Jeannie's been absolutely vital to us. She has sanded all of these hallway walls to get all the old paint off and prep for new paint. Here's an example of how we've taken a classroom, divided it in half, created a new doorway. We cut through the clay tiles that you see. We frame it up, pour a new concrete header, and then we'll have ourselves a new door. This is Peter with the plumbing, which was a nightmare to get in, weaving through all that construction support you see there. The photo on the right is the plumbing in the basement. This is the new elevator going in, or lift, which will help any of us who need to get to the second floor. This is the entry doorway. Look at the size of that concrete header over there. That's the kind of support structure we have been putting into this building to make it absolutely last for hundreds of years. Now, this is an example of fireproofing again. Notice these are metal studs, but look at the horizontal metal strips you see there. Those are soundproofing strips. They are mounted on rubber, and this is to minimize any kind of sound coming through from room to room. This is the conference room, having been stripped out and now ready to be upfitted. This is the conference room with replastered walls. As look at the ceiling, you can see the number of patchworks we had to do there. New sheetrock and, of course, insulation behind that. This is an artist's rendering of what the classroom may look like when we occupy the building, which we hope will be really soon. I'm showing you this to show you the foam insulation we've done to all of the exterior walls, again for environmental control. And then look to the left-hand side of the left picture, and you will see insulation also between the rooms. Each room will have its own thermostat to control the temperature so that we can minimize the ecological impact as well as keep our dollar costs down. So this is the digitizing room ready for sheetrock. This is what we hope the digitizing room will look like when we are ready. We'll have 4 desks in corners, all with printers and scanners to digitize all of the written materials. Now, this is the Baba room. Notice on the left, the soundproofing strips again. Notice the vaulted ceiling that you can see above the windows. Now we have sheetrock up. We also have the HVAC system up there on your left and wiring coming through the ceiling. This is a rendering of what we hope the Baba room will look like for meditation purposes and contemplation. This is the library, ready for a little more sheetrock. This is what we anticipate from an artist rendering the library will look like when we are in the building. This is the volunteer room, and the doorway you see there is the volunteer coordinator's private office. Now, this is the archive processing room. Between those 2 tall cabinets, you'll see a clay block wall. We had to tear that entire wall down from the attic all the way to the ground and bring it back up again in order to build properly a fireproof, safe vault. So this is the upper vault will be here and the lower vault will be directly beneath it. We had to tear out the floor underneath that vault, restructure and strengthen the existing girders. This is the preparation for new concrete to be poured in that floor, and of course it would be the ceiling of the vault below. This is the finished concrete in that room. This is the concrete block wall now brought up from the ground. The door you see there is a steel frame door. We'll have a steel door. Both vaults will have their separate HVAC systems to control temperature not only, but in particular humidity. These are both fireproof vaults, and we have emphasized that greatly in our preparation of this building in case any adverse thing ever happened. This is the room now with sheetrock, wires hanging down through the ceiling ready for lighting, and you can see the insulation on the exterior walls. This is what an artist rendering is of what the room will look like, and in the far back side there in the light gray area would be the door into the vault. Thank you for letting us show you where we started, where we've been, and we anticipate being in this building very soon. Painting should start any day now.
Thank you, Hugh. That presentation gives us an idea of the incredible scale of the renovations going on in this building. So thank you very much for that. Next, we're going to hear from the MAC board chair and president, Scott Tower, who's going to give us a glimpse of the bigger picture of the project and where it's headed. Scott?
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everybody. It's wonderful to be here with you today. Thank you for joining us. And I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of some of the bigger picture. Why are we doing this? Why do we feel that it's so important? And I'd like to start with a short exercise. So if you could make yourselves comfortable, and if you're comfortable doing so, just close your eyes for a couple of minutes. And first, just think of Baba and why we're all here in our different ways. And then I'd like you to imagine something. I'd like you to imagine that for some reason, you have just received word that you have to leave your home on short notice. No one's in any danger, but you only have a short period of time to gather those things that are most important to you. What would you take? Why? And for whom? If you've had your eyes closed, you can open them now. Typically, for many people, family photos are top priority. And why is this? I think it's because it's a connection to both the past and the future. It's a memory of loved ones, of events, pictures of generations that have come before that we may never have met, or that our children and grandchildren will never meet. So I think also, as Baba has told us, that our spiritual path is really one of remembering, of remembrance, remembering Baba as our true selves, remembering who we really are in him, that wonderful image of all of us being drops heading finally to dissolve into him in his ocean. I think for many of us in this circumstance of having to leave our home unexpectedly, we would choose Baba treasures. They would be on the short list of things, whether it is a piece of Baba's hair or something that Baba has blessed or touched, special photos, correspondence. We would want to make sure that we saved those things. Now, our connection with Baba is entirely internal and is not in any way dependent on anything external, and certainly not on any things or objects. But as we heard earlier in Heather's presentation, Baba also said to Mehra that the world had no idea the significance one scrap of his sadhra would have in the future. So this brings us to MAC, Meher Archive Collective, and the passion and urgency that all of us involved feel for this project. What's our responsibility as individuals to ourselves, to each other, and to future generations? I think it's true that we really all have no idea how fortunate we are. It's possible that maybe that it's just not possible for us to grasp how fortunate we are to live in such proximity to the Avatar. Imagine for a moment if Mary Magdalene's private diaries surfaced or were available or had been kept somewhere, or a clear record of discussions between Jesus and his disciples was available for people today. How valuable would that be to the world? We have these things as a community. It's really up to us to make every effort to preserve and protect these, not for ourselves, but for generations to come. Future generations, of course, will all individuals have their own internal path to God. But it really is dependent upon us, and by us, I mean all Baba lovers throughout the world, to have a preserved record of Baba's life and message, as well as maintaining and sharing, hopefully, something of his fragrance. This fragrance is something that many of us often felt in stories in Mandalay Hall or elsewhere. I know it's true for me personally. Hearing each other's stories, hearing the stories of the Mandalay and their time with Baba. This is just as important as preserving artifacts, I believe. So too your stories. So it's important that you record in some manner your personal story, as it will have significance in the future. In this beautiful building, which you've just seen a little glimpse of, it's becoming more and more infused with love for our beloved. Here, MAC will be a vehicle to preserve and share the fragrance of the Avatar so that stories, images, and artifacts will inspire others to know about Baba or to deepen their understanding of his message of love. And to do all this, we have to be practical. We have to be practical in our attention to archiving processes and details. We have to be practical in the details of the renovations and construction. We also have to be practical regarding our structure as an organization. As we all know, how we do things is often just as important as what we do. And this is also true of MAC as an organization. And to this end, we have been engaged in a process of updating our organizational and governance structure to ensure the long-term success and viability of MAC. For several months now, John Justo has been helping the board in this process and has provided invaluable guidance and input. I'd like now to turn it over to John to give you an update about some of these changes. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Scott. Let me start off by saying I'm very glad to be involved with MAC. We're getting closer and closer to getting into the building, and that is exciting. And we're looking forward to further progress towards MAC realizing its mission, which is now further defined with the declaration and clarification of MAC's primary and secondary purposes. These were published in MAC's most recent newsletter, which is available on our website, and they are up on the screen. MAC's charter now states that MAC is to have as its primary purpose the establishment, operation, and maintenance of an archive focused on Meher Baba, his followers, and his impact on the world. And to have as its secondary purpose to become a resource center fostering education, fellowship, service, and community based on Meher Baba's mission and impact on humanity. MAC will become an active resource center, a place with people to help researchers, writers, spiritual seekers, and anyone interested in delving more deeply into the history of Meher Baba and his life, his mission, his legacy. MAC is also dedicated to having projects, programs, and events that serve the Baba community near and far, and reach out to meet needs in the world at large and the various communities in that world in a spirit of oneness and shared humanity. MAC is changing and expanding and needs your help to realize its vision, mission, and purposes. Why get involved with MAC? Because it can be rewarding and fulfilling to apply oneself to work inspired by Meher Baba, his life, and his mission. Especially during these times of transition and need, not just for MAC and the Baba community, but for all of humanity. What does MAC need now? MAC is in the process of changing its organizational structure. From a working board to a governing board, from a board where the members are involved, if not in charge, of daily operations, to one where they are chiefly concerned with policymaking. For example, clarifying the primary and secondary purposes. Fundraising, like the new fundraising portal and fundraising initiative. Communications and community relations, including such changes as the response buttons in the last newsletter and the breakout rooms later in this meeting. During the transition, day-to-day operations will progressively be overseen by an executive director and administrator and carried out by various teams. For example, an archives team, a library team, and a projects, programs, and events team. In the big picture, the executive director, as a non-voting member of the board and CEO of operations, will coordinate the board side and the operations side with the help of the administrator. This is not dissimilar to Meher Spiritual Center in Myrtle Beach, and they have helped us a lot with our thinking and planning. But MAC will have to find its own way of doing it, and we are in the process of doing just that. MAC is still a young organization, especially with respect to its transition to a new structure. It is young, growing, and has needs. MAC will need more people involved to fill out the positions in this new structure so it can realize its mission. All of us here hope you are inspired by MAC's mission and interested in helping MAC realize its potential and be a success. Let your voice be heard. Let your efforts make a difference. Get involved and see if you like it. There's something to using the skills you have, and some you might know you have, might not know you have, when the work centers around Meher Baba. Putting an effort in learning to work in harmony, being challenged mentally and spiritually. Let's remember this is a Baba organization. And facing those challenges, feeling Baba's help and presence while working for him as he's working for us, on us, and through us. Become a volunteer on a board committee or operations team and be part of the change you want to see. You may find after working with us that you even want to become a board member or a team lead. MAC, as Meher Archive Collective, a collective of individuals sharing a vision and mission, has made a declaration and clarification of its chartered purposes. You can be part of what comes next. You can make a difference in the difference MAC makes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And a hearty Jai Baba to you all.
Jay Baba, and thank you, both Scott and John, for those comments. We appreciate that. We are next going to have Evie come back, and she's going to give a presentation that I think will move you. Evie?
Okay, this is actually not a formal presentation. This is playtime for our bodies, minds, and spirits. So I am going to invite each one of you to take a very mindful breath for yourself. You can imagine that breath starting at the soles of your feet, rising up through your body, and leaving through the top of your head. You can even say, ah, as you exhale. Yeah, I can hear the ah, even though you're muted. That's great. Okay, now just tap the soles of your feet, kind of push your soles of your feet into the ground. Just feel your grounding under you. As you do that, you might notice that your leg muscles start to get activated too. And as your leg muscles get activated, you'll notice your seat on your chair. So now I'm going to invite you along with me, scoot your chair out a little bit and find a very Baba-ful way to stand up for yourself. So we're all going to stand up. And as you stand, I want to invite you again to feel the soles of your feet. Take a nice deep breath. Here's a little trick. If you inhale for 4, hold for 4, and exhale for 6, it's a really great stress buster. So just try that for 1 round. I'm not going to count for you. Now what I invite you to do, here we are gathered in community, which we haven't had much of in the last couple of years. And those of you whose screens are visible, we can all see each other. So I want you to think about one of the most profound gifts that you have received in your relationship with Meher Baba. It might be something that came into you from him, or something that you offer back to him, or maybe a combination. And see if you can find a gesture to represent what that is. You might just close your eyes for a moment. Think about what that is. And then show us on the screen how that looks. And look around and see the beautiful gestures that other people are also making. Yeah, so the hands moving, beautiful hands coming up and shaping into a circle, hands extending out. Oh, I see hands in a heart. That is lovely. And just take a look as you keep in touch with your own. This is our Baba world. This is the community. We are gathered here today from near and far, and we share and remember that it's always about love. Now I invite you to find a new, very mindful way to sit back in your chair. Imagine that that chair is there simply to serve all of your needs in this moment, and you can find a new way to sit in it. You can notice your feet on the floor, pushing in. Take another nice deep breath and just look around to see who your friends are here in this community. Yeah, and that makes us smile. Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Evie. We appreciate that. Nice to move around a little bit. Okay, we have a wonderful keynote presentation here from Ward. All right, so Ward, take it away.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak, and congratulations on this magnificent undertaking that MAC has embarked upon. I feel it could become a major resource and center in our entire Baba culture. Have not myself been an archivist, but my last 25 years have been completely centered on working with archival materials. So some of the things that some of you have said about the worth of these materials, I can really speak to from my own experience. Back shortly after Baba dropped his body, a leather briefcase was found at Meherazad containing the source manuscripts for Infinite Intelligence and Tiffin Lectures and Creation and Its Causes. All three of these have since that time been published as books of Meher Baba's discourses, Creation and Its Causes most recently. I'll be saying more about this in a minute. But if those manuscripts had been lost or had not been rediscovered shortly after Baba dropped the body, an unimaginable treasure to humanity would have been lost. So these materials have a really big role to play in the future of humanity. I myself have worked mostly with documents and things like that, and it does cause me to notice that it seems that archival collections can be divided into two kinds of things, broadly speaking. One would be items whose real essence lies in the materiality of the physical object, like, let's say, a piece of Baba Sadra, something like that. And the other would be items much of whose essential content consists in what they record, like a letter or a diary or things like that. It's really with the second type of thing that I've worked and that I have more to say about. And so far as that goes, here's something that I really think is worth noting, that the scope of an archive or a resource center need not be limited by the collection of objects that it physically possesses in the second category of things. Like, here's an example of that. In compiling 6 new discourses for this book, Baba's Discourses to the Mandali, we had 2 manuscripts that served as the source for it. One was in the possession of Merwan Jesawala, Erich's brother at Meherazad, and he made it available for scanning and copying and so forth. And the other turned out to be in the keeping of Chris and Christine Pearson, who received their materials from Phyllis Frederick. So in working with this stuff, for me, the important thing was not actually to have possession of the documents, but to have access to the digital scans. And you'll notice that there was no single archival collection that had both of these, but both were most necessary. What I'm trying to suggest here is that the future of research and sharing the vision of the life and message of Meher Baba, which is so central to what MAC is about, has everything to do with networking and collaborating and finding ways of interacting with other research centers and other collections. And even in areas where MAC's own collections may be very meager, you may not have, let's say, Chanji's diaries, for example, that need not limit MAC if you find ways of having access to this content and making it available to people who come there. If MAC provided access to all the manuscripts that I needed, even though it had in its possession not one of them, I would go to MAC. That's what is really needed. So the vision of what it pursues can be expanded way beyond the material foundations that you may have in actual physical objects. A lot of working with archival materials, in my experience, also has to do with learning how to study them, collecting information from them, having groups of people interacting. That's where a lot of the enthusiasm comes from that. You could have classes, you could create audio recordings or videos or books or things like that. I mean, just to look at the magnificent physical facility that MAC has, it is absolutely set perfect for all of these kinds of things to happen there. And it can become a dynamic, living, exciting place where people want to go to feed and share in the vision that these, archival materials ultimately contain as their fundamental essence. As a last thing, I'm thinking some of the great, let's say, scriptures of the past, like the Quran or the Gospels or the Vedas or the Mahabharata, at various times of their life, did subsist in written documents. And if those had not been kept, all of those things would have been lost. But as they go out, they need not be limited by their material base. So, you could have a reading of these things or videos of them. So the power and outreach of MAC is really quite unlimited, and does not at all need to be confined by the things that you actually physically possess. I do think that the future of this work of sharing Meher Baba's life and message to the world does belong, or a central part will be played with those who have a vision like this and can reach out and make contact with others all over the world. Anyway, that's just a few thoughts on this, and all success to this magnificent effort that you've embarked on. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Thank you, Ward, for those insightful and inspiring comments there about the potential of MAC. I'd like to turn it over now to Scott and Evie again, and they're going to give us information about MAC's finances and fundraising efforts.
Great. Thank you, Chris, and thank you again to Ward for your comments and vision. It's very much in keeping with our hopes and dreams as well. I'm going to share a little bit, some brief information about finances, and Evie is then going to share some information about our current fundraising. Next, please. We'll take a look first at a little bit of history and some background, maybe familiar to some of you, but just to give you a very quick run through, the genesis of this project started back in 2016. And after that time, early archiving work was done in an office in Asheville. And in 2018, we purchased this building, which you've heard quite a bit about already. And it was quite extraordinary, a 25,000 square foot, beautifully built 90-year-old building on 6 acres of land at the private well. We were able to purchase it for $550,000. And it's about the price of a parking space in Brooklyn these days, I think. It was a wonderful value, and that was really only possible through an outpouring of tremendous love and support from around the world in terms of financial donations that enabled us to purchase the building. Definitely, to me and many others, felt like Baba turned the key. It was kind of an impossible thing to undertake, but he made it possible, and has of course made everything since then possible. So over the last 4 years, we've been working both in archiving and also working very hard on the building itself, as you've seen in Hugh's presentation. Phase 1, as you've heard, is nearly complete, and we are looking at the first quarter, hopefully very close to the beginning of the new year, to move into the building and be functioning there with all the different components that you've already heard about. So that's a wonderful thing. Many people have asked, why is it taking so long? And frankly, some of us occasionally have found ourselves wondering the same thing. But it's taken the time that it's taken. A tremendous amount of work has gone in. COVID certainly had a huge impact, supply chain issues, et cetera. But we're getting very close to the finish line of phase 1 at this point. So I'd like to show you the next slide, please. This just gives a brief graphic of what's come in and what's gone out. And to date, since the beginning, we've raised just over $1.7 million in the Baba community worldwide, which is, we think, quite extraordinary and for which we're extremely grateful. This has been donations, some large, others small, but everyone given with love. The other figure on that left-hand part of the screen is really equally important. We estimate that we've had over 12,000 hours from volunteers, which is really quite extraordinary. You saw some pictures earlier of some people working, and it's been because of this outpouring of effort, outpouring of financial support, but also outpouring of physical presence and skill, from skilled labor to helping clean up and things like that. So that's really what's made it possible and enabled us to make very good use of the money that we've received. You see on the right there a little pie chart giving you an overview of where all this money's gone. It's just over $1.6 million represented there, building and land, contract labor, infrastructure, et cetera. So that shows you a little bit of where it's all gone. I think we've been extremely good stewards of the money that's been lovingly donated, and we certainly keep in mind how attentive Baba was to every single paisa in the days with the Mandali, and trying to be very careful with how we're spending the money, and feel like we've gotten a tremendous value out of it so far. Next, please. This gives you a little bit more of a longer timeline. Phase 1, which you've heard about, is nearing completion. And then after that, we have phase 2, which is going to be the completion of the renovations on the ground floor of the building, enabling us to rent out some space there that will generate some income to help support the operations of MAC activities upstairs. And finally, phase 3, farther out in the calendar, is going to be turning the beautiful auditorium, gymnasium, into a professional performance space for music sahavas, other Baba gatherings. And we certainly anticipate that greater numbers of people will come to such events, will be interested to find out about Baba. Additionally, we hope to have some rental income from that space as well. Next, please. So I want to just tell you a little bit of, you've heard about what we've received and what we've spent, and now turning a little bit to where we're going forward and what we need. On the right-hand portion of this slide, there's a very brief and general diagram of our expenses in our current fiscal year, majority of it in building reconstruction and renovation, operations, and also moving costs represented by the furniture and equipment there. We're currently, as you may know, in a fundraising campaign, and I'd like to turn things over to Evie Lindeman, who is heading up our fundraising effort, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about where we stand with all of that and how you can participate. Over to you, Evie.
Great. Thank you, Scott. I'm happy to tell you that we now have 4 people on our fundraising team, and that consists of Scott Tower, Jean Brunet, Christina Riley, and myself. This year, we've sponsored community-based fundraisers. So 2 house concerts organized by Elisa Genovese, and a charming play entitled Castles in Heaven, written and directed by Irma Shepherd and enacted on the field behind the MAC building. Additionally, we've engaged with Flipcause, an organization dedicated to fundraising and safe storage of that data. In our current campaign, our fundraising goal is $250,000. Many of you have helped us with this campaign. We've even received donations from Baba lovers who have never visited MAC, but who feel the importance of his mission, of our mission, as we all do. We've received substantial donations as well as smaller donations, and all of them matter. We also have a program of monthly donors and invite you to consider joining that effort with any amount that you would like. So thank you all. Gay Dunn, Jana Weed, and Robbie Avons have been a part of our terrific communications team, sending out MAC's latest updates. Next slide, please. So the montage photo shows some of the material that we've used for the campaign. You can see that it includes a range of visuals, including Mara's blouse, 2 doors from Guru Prasad, Rano Gailey's paints, and Baba's 7-colored flag. You can also see our team of construction workers engaged in getting MAC up to speed. On the left-hand side, you can see Connor drilling into the outside wall for the installation of external lighting. Next slide, please. So here are some of the specific costs associated with our campaign. I am especially excited about the lift, which will not only transport goods, but people, and particularly those who may have difficulty navigating stairs. And you can see some of these other itemized amounts. And sometimes people have a particular penchant for donating to an aspect of this, which is why we like to show these figures. Next slide, please. So here's a snapshot of our Flip Cause landing page. As you can see, we've been able to raise $107,000 as of today. This is in part because of a generous anonymous donor who offered a $30,000 match, which has now been met, and we are thrilled. Also, as of today, we have a second anonymous match of $25,000. This means that you can double your impact by participating now. Anything you offer will be doubled to benefit MAC until we reach the $25,000 threshold. Next slide, please. Finally, here are some ways that you can join us. So you can do a monthly donation if you like, as I mentioned before. Any amount is welcome. You can do individual one-time giving, and you can do legacy giving. So here are a few examples of legacy giving. So one is to put MAC into your will. Another one is to make MAC a beneficiary of your 401k. You could also donate appreciated securities, which come with very nice tax benefits, and you can consult with your tax specialist to help you with that if you're interested. And finally, you can donate property or real estate. So I'd like you to feel free to contact either Scott or myself or both of us to discuss your financial participation in any of the ways that I've mentioned. We'd be happy to talk with you directly. This is a long-term project, one that will be carried on well past any of our lifetimes. And you can come to our breakout room for a conversation with us if you'd like. We hope you do. And I want to give special thanks to each one of you for being with us today and for your interest and attention to MAC. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Scott and Evie. Appreciate that information. And we're going to now have Ron Cantor discuss with us community engagement and looking ahead. So, Ron.
Hi there, everybody. Jay Baba. Part of what we're trying to do here is not only raise money to preserve artifacts of Meher Baba and his life and such, but also to provide a way to allow the community to be engaged in doing projects that would align with Meher Baba's mission on Earth. Now, I'll let you draw your own conclusions about what kind of projects those might be, and provide for you an opportunity to engage with us in an in-reach way. In other words, how you can kind of reach in and make suggestions of things that could be done at the Baba building that would be, would uplift the community, as well as, help get Baba's message out to the world. So we coined the phrase projects, programs, and events because we're looking for a variety of different suggestions for what could be done. And here's what we'd like to do, if that's okay. You can go to the next slide now, please. Here's the proposal application form. This form will be up on our website. It is now, and it has a tag called Project Proposal on it. If you like, please go to the form website, open the form, put in your name, phone number, and email, the name of a proposed project or event that you think would be something you'd like to help support at the center. What type of project and its description, please, so we know what you're talking about, and who in the community will be served and how that project would relate to Meher Baba, his mission, the Baba community, and also the community that's an extended community. We're looking forward to hearing from you. please do fill out a form if you have an idea for a project, an event, or a program. We will not be moving forward to execute on any of these until obviously the building is safe and occupiable. But in the meantime, if you fill out a form, you can expect to hear from John Justo or myself within 2 weeks to have a discussion with you about what your ideas and how you want to do it. Obviously, we're open to different ideas, and we look forward to an ongoing dialogue to figure out ways we can better help serve Meher Baba's mission and the community near and far. And to that end, I look forward to Laurent's presentation because he's going to show you some folks who've done some wonderful things as volunteers for MAC. That's my presentation. I hope people will engage, and if you know others who want to engage, have them fill out a form and submit it. Thank you very much. Jai Baba.
That's great. Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Next, we're going to hear from Laurent, and who's going to talk about the volunteer programs. Also, I want to remind everybody that those breakout rooms, you'll have more opportunities to ask questions about the specific topics that we've been going over. Okay, Laurent.
Hey, Baba. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. Earlier this year, I started working with the MAC volunteers. Shortly after that, I was invited to be a board member, so I'm very happy to be working with the MAC. Next slide, please. One thing to note here is that there's no way I could have created a slideshow to represent all the many volunteers who have provided their time and energy over the years. It's just too many people, too much time. But we are going to showcase just a few people who I've been able to see their work. First one is Gay. Gay Dunn has been volunteering for the last 3 years. She manages our email campaigns, our website, and creates beautiful graphics such as what you see here on the slide. Mac's series on Baba Zoom. She's involved with fundraising, surveys, and much more. So we're extremely grateful to you, Gay. Thank you so much for your hard work. Next slide. Elaine, I've known Elaine since I'm 17 years old. There she is in 1988 with beloved Mera. We were in India at the same time there in the 80s. Here she is working on the beautiful flag that we saw. She's been volunteering since 2019 in the conservation area. I saw a video of her working with beloved Baba's bathwater, Mera's blouse that we saw in a previous photo. Those items with Muhammad Must, a drawing of his, that kafni that we saw, of course, the flag, and she got involved with floor plan for shelving in the archive vault. So she's a multi-talented and tireless worker. Thank you, Elaine. More Elaine. Here she is working with Franny on a project in the Gulf Street office downtown in Nashville. Cheryl, many things happen that are not necessarily easily visible. And one of those is the IT that goes on behind the scenes. Cheryl's involved with the IT team in terms of policy and also endless technical assistance for our website and communications. There's a whole platform behind all that she has deployed with a team, not alone, and developed a help desk system for us and self-help and knowledge base and all that. So great work, Cheryl. Thank you so much. What can I say about Peter? Again, I've known Peter for decades. He has been the linchpin of the work at the Red Oak School building, what's going to become the MAC headquarters. He is there really day and night. It's incredible to see him at work. Some of the many things that we've got on the list is the HVAC work. Of course, there's going to be heating and cooling needs for the whole building. The lift installation, that's a giant project unto itself. Electrical and plumbing, if he doesn't do it, he oversees it. The drywall, the refinishing of the floors, carpentry, all the things that you can think of that go into a restoration and many things you can't think of. I've seen the list, it's extensive. And Peter and Debbie, thank you so much for all that you give. Peter's there and Debbie's behind the scenes cheerleading, I know. So thank you so much for your work. Jana serves on our communications team with Jean, Gay, and Irma, as well as Rabia. She's also on our fundraising team. She's a coordinator for our quarterly newsletter. She's a co-leader of our social media outreach. You can see on Instagram and other places, Facebook with Rabia, many different videos and postings and memes. It's really wonderful work. Thank you so much, Jana. And lastly, we need your help. There's constant needs at the MAC for different roles. Information technology is going to always be a need. The fundraising team, content around programming. I know Christina Riley is a new volunteer. She has a lot of ideas about programming. Any work that you can help with at the building site. Peter's mentioned when we're all ready to move in, a lot of cleaning that needs to be done and setting things up. Scanning documents and other materials, video production, if you know how to do that, newsletter work, and many other things. If you have any questions or you'd like to volunteer, please reach out to me. I'm laurent@meherarchive.org. I made that so that you don't have to use my last name. So there you go. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Laurent. That's great. Okay, so we have mentioned several times that there are breakout rooms, but these are the different breakout rooms: finances and fundraising, volunteers, building and grounds, future programs and projects, and archive and library. So the breakout rooms will be available for about 15 minutes, and you'll be given the opportunity to join those breakout rooms shortly. But first, we need to finish up with the main part of our program. And we're going to do that by first having a moment of silence followed by the Beloved God prayer. We will have that moment of silence now. Jai Baba. With Baba's picture still there, let's say the Beloved God prayer. Beloved God, help us all
love
to
you
love you
more
and
and
more.
more and still yet more till
Till we
become
become worthy of union
with you.
and help us all to hold fast to Baba's demand
till
till
the
the
very
very
end.
And
Jai Baba. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Hugh, would you please formally close this section of the meeting, and then we will talk more about the breakout rooms.
Yes, Chris, I will. This 2022 annual general meeting of the Meher Archive Collective is now officially closed.
That's great. Okay, so here we all are. So move your cursor down at the bottom of your Zoom screen and you'll see that breakout rooms. When you click out on breakout rooms, it's going to give you a list of breakout rooms and you can join those breakout rooms if you choose to do so. And you'll be there for a few minutes and you can ask questions of the people there.
All right. We'll see you all back here for a farewell at the end of the breakout rooms. We'll have about 15 minutes that they'll be open.
David, thanks for being such a courageous soul at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I'm very, very keen to understand what you're all doing over there, and it's very exciting.
wow.
Is that David Bowling? Oh my. This is Debbie.
All the way from
David.
Australia, David, huh?
Oh,
I'm not
David,
gonna-
have a wonderful trip. You're getting ready to
Thank
go to
you.
Meherazad.
He's there.
I'm in Meherazad.
Oh, you're already there? Oh,
Well,
Jeanette.
Jeanette.
Oh my God,
Jeanette,
Jeanette's here
wow.
too. I had no idea you guys were here. Around the world, we're all together.
Right.
Well, I hope everybody had a good time, an interesting time at the
David and
breakout
Jeanette are
room.
here.
I apologize to the people in the archiving break room. We didn't quite get through all of our questions, but please email me with anything else that comes to mind. I am very happy to answer y'all's questions because my little group had some real zingers of questions. Very, very good people. I love how y'all are thinking.
That's great.
And I'll send out, just so you know, for the folks who participated in the future programs, I will send out an email with John just to constitute what we call a circle of trust to begin developing the ideas that came up in ways that will satisfy you. And by the way, Dr. Robinson, I'm sorry you got cut off at the end there.
Just call me Elizabeth. That'll be fine. Thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Great.
And here I was worried that 15 minutes was going to be too much time. No, it sounds like everyone really, we probably could have talked for much, much longer.
Mm.
Hello
Yeah.
to everyone. I'm sorry I got so late. Yeah.
Hello,
Elaine
Elaine.
Roma.
Thank you for joining us from Italia.
Oh, you're welcome. The rest of I'm in my son's house and they're all asleep, so I'm trying to keep it down a little bit in volume.
That's great.
Yeah, this has been really, really nice. Thank you, everybody. Jai Baba.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Are we
Thank you,
finished?
everybody.
Yes, Jay Baba.
Good night.
Let's say an avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai, everybody. How about 3 rounds?
Avatar,
Meher Baba.
Jai.
Jai.
Avatar,
Meher Baba. Jai.
Avatar
Meher Baba. Jai.
Okay, everybody.
There'll be
Thank you all
opportunity
for
to
coming.
continue these conversations and appreciate everybody's input. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Jai
Baba.
Baba.
Good night, everybody.
Baba,
Jai
everybody.
Baba, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
a wonderful meeting. I just loved
Thank
it.
you for coming.
Thank you.
I loved it.
Jai Baba.
Good night,
Jai
everybody.
Everybody, it was
Bye.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Baba.
Jai Baba, everybody. Have a great night. It's a nice meeting.
Jai Baba, Jana.
Thank you.